novel. Alright, so let's take a look at the main characters. So as you're reading, you'll notice these different people. So I'm giving you a basic overview of who they are, and see if you can learn a little bit more about them as you read. So the first main character is George Milton. He's a small, quick-witted migrant worker who travels with this other worker named Lenny Small. So these are our two main characters, right, as shown here in this picture. So you got kind of a small little dude working and living alongside a larger man named Lenny Small, and he's childlike because he has this mild disability that makes him kind of solely dependent on George, and George likes Lenny and cares about him, but he is always talking about how his life would be a lot easier if he didn't have Lenny around. And as you read in the beginning of the story, you'll find out why he is always frustrated with Lenny. So these two, again, are our two main characters, and they, again, go to farm to find work. And these are the characters, too, that have a dream of owning their own farm, in particular a rabbit farm, to live the rest of their days on, instead of having to work for other farmers. All right, then we have Crooks. He's a black stable hand who gets his name from his crooked back. So he's not really called by his first name, and so we can see some of the discrimination against blacks at this time. He's bitter, again, because of his situation, because of the discrimination, yet he's also a kind of funny character. Again, he's isolated from the other men because of his skin color, and so we'll see some of the discrimination against African Americans at this time. There, just an FYI, there is the use of the N-word in this novella. I think it occurs once or twice, so just a heads up on that. All right, at that time, that word was acceptable. Again, things have changed. All right, Candy. He's an old ranch handyman who lost his arm in an accident, so he's worried about his future at this job because he might become useless. And he has this old dog that he really loves. All right, then you're gonna have this kind of group of outsiders, with Lenny being someone who has a disability, Crooks, who is a part of a racial group that was discriminated at this time, and Candy, an older gentleman. So again, these people in this story kind of represent people who are isolated from the rest of society, especially at this time. So the old, the people of different colored skin, and the disabled. Then you have Curly, who is the boss's son. He wears fancy boots to distinguish himself from the other workers, so you kind of could view him as a spoiled brat in a way. He's rumored to be a prize fighter, really good at boxing, right? So someone who's strong. And so because he's strong, he's pretty aggressive and likes to pick fights, which causes our characters trouble. All right, and then we have Curly's wife, the only female character in this story, and she's not given a name. She's called a tramp and a tart by the male workers, and she dresses kind of fancy. So we see also discrimination against women here and the role of women in this story. So again, we have another character who belongs in this kind of marginalized group from society. So again, women here, African Americans, old people, and the disabled. All right, so we have these groups of characters representing those marginalized groups of people in society at this time. And then we have Slim, who's a highly skilled mule driver. He's the only character who seems at peace with himself and is fine and content about where he is. He's pretty understanding and smart, so people go to him to seek advice. And he becomes an important character to our main characters. Then we have Carlson, another ranch hand. He complains about Candy's old dog, kind of represents this younger generation who complains about the older generation. And he also has a gun, which is a crucial plot point. And then we have the boss, the owner of the ranch. He doesn't really appear much. I think he only appears once. And he seems to be a fair kind of guy. Alright, so those are our list of main characters. So pay attention to these types of people and the roles that they play in the story. And based on those roles, consider what is John Steinbeck trying to say about these people or about America at this time. Alright, so that leads us into major themes. So you got hopes and dreams and plans, alright? Lenny and George hope and dream and plan to buy their own farm and raise rabbits. We got friendship between Lenny and George and some of the other characters, especially though between Lenny and George. They're not super close related, so this friendship is important to both of them, regardless of blood. We have the theme of isolation. Again, you have those groups of people who are isolated or marginalized from society. Innocence and weakness. So you have a character like Lenny who has a disability, and he's childlike, and so he has this sort of innocence about him because it doesn't seem like he fully understands the consequences of his actions or things like that. And then you have other characters who express a bit of weakness, whether that's emotional weakness or mental weakness or physical weakness. So you need to explore those elements in the story. We got freedom versus confinement. So you have the idea of when they own their own farm, then they'll be free to do what they want, versus being a migrant worker where they're forced to work on someone else's ranch, on someone else's farm, and don't feel as free. Yeah, the theme of discrimination, as I talked about before. Again, you have those different groups that are discriminated: African Americans, women, old people, people with disabilities, and we'll see that in the story. Role of women, right? Because we only have one woman character. What is Steinbeck trying to say? Is he actually being a misogynist, or is he trying to express how women felt at the time? We got man in the natural world. You'll see a lot of connections between the characters and the natural setting that they're in, especially if you take a look at the beginning of the book. Where are George and Lenny? How is the nature around them described? Because at the end, you'll also have an image of nature as well. And it's important to note what does the natural world, how does it reflect what's going on in the human world here? We have the concept of justice. So if someone who does something wrong but doesn't quite understand what they're doing is wrong, what is the proper punishment and things like that. And then, of course, we have this whole idea of America during the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. So we have this representation of what this time period was like for these people. Alrighty, so that concludes our background information on Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. I hope you guys enjoy the book.